morning, everyone. My name is Donovan Smalls II, and I am extremely grateful for the opportunity to serve as a speaker at the Feed the Soul Virtual Summit. And in my presentation, I will be discussing career support, transferring athlete skills to life after sports. And I just want to briefly explain my approach to this particular presentation. I tried to give as many practical explanations and recommendations as to how we can help student athletes transfer to life after sport in a better way. And I'm looking at this presentation from the perspective of a point guard, because when I was a student athlete, I was a point guard. I played basketball in high school and also in college. And I think that viewing the presentation from this perspective allowed me to kind of provide those practical explanations based on my experience. And then I hope that everyone will be able to draw from my experience and relate that to their particular role as it relates to, academics, as it relates to coaching, as it relates to being a parent. And I think that this approach will really add some fun to the presentation as well. On this first slide, we see two of my favorite point guards in Steph Curry and Chris Paul. And when we look at these point guards, they are very different in a lot of different ways. Steph Curry is known for being a long-range shooter, and in my opinion, the best shooter that we've ever seen in NBA history. And then we look at Chris Paul, who is also, I believe, one of the best point guards in NBA history, but he does his job in a very different way. He is more so known for being a floor general, a leader on the court, and directs guys in terms of getting them where they need to be. And these 2 point guards allow me to see the importance of knowing your game. And how do you know your game? You have to study yourself. My father and my grandfather, they always say, you have to study yourself. What does that mean? That means that you have to spend time canceling the noise of the world to really discover the gifts and the talents that you possess, besides shooting a jump shot, besides being able to dunk a basketball. And if we're looking at different sports, we have to look at the importance of knowing your game, knowing who you are, not just your ability to run routes or catch touchdown passes. And so I think when student athletes really take the time to discover the skills, the abilities, the talents that they possess besides being a great athlete, they will have a better opportunity to discover who they are and where they want the direction of their life to go. Our next principle is that you have to have a vision. You have to have a vision. So when we look at Magic Johnson, arguably the best point guard of all time in NBA history, we look at somebody who was really able to anticipate where guys were going to be and deliver the basketball on time so that they can be successful in their particular position. So not only was Magic Johnson an amazing basketball player known for his flashy passes, he was also, he's also a person who is known for being a great businessman, right? So not only was he learning how to be a great basketball player and have vision on the court, while he was playing, he had vision for what he wanted to do once his athletic career ended. And that was to be a successful businessman. That was to be a successful entrepreneur. And so, as an athlete, not only do you have to have great vision on the court or on the field to be effective at your particular position, you also have to be able to have vision for your life after sport, your life when you are about to retire. And this has to happen early. So although you cannot control what is next in your life, right? You cannot control the outcome of you applying to a job and getting hired. You cannot control the outcome of you being successful at business. You can anticipate what is next while you are playing. I remember speaking to a student athlete, and he was a senior. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you want to do now that your athletic career is about to end? And he said, Dr. Smalls, I'm really not sure. I don't know what I want to do. And I don't even want to think about that. And so for me, that really was disturbing, because here he was, a senior, not even wanting to think about what he wanted to do next with his life, because all his life, it was just about sports. And so I think that as educators, as coaches, as leaders, we have to start having these conversations with student athletes earlier about what do you want to do next. And I always try to approach the situation in terms of what do you want to do next. I try not to approach the situation in terms of statistics and saying that less than 2% of athletes will go pro, right? Because as an athlete, let's think about it. When we were athletes, we didn't want to hear anybody talk to us about the reality of not making it. We just wanted to hear about the examples of people who were in our position who did make it. And so I think even if you make it to the NBA, even if you make it to the NFL or the WNBA or whatever it is that your particular aspiration is in sport, you still have to think about what's next. You have to anticipate what's next. So I think having that vision, not only on the court or on the field, but having the vision for your life in life after sport is extremely important to your success. So our third principle is the importance of making others better. So when I look at these 2 point guards, we see Sue Bird and then we see Steve Nash. Now, in my opinion, one of their greatest qualities was their ability as point guards to make others better. They were unselfish. They were selfless. They gave to other people. They were known for making assists. They were known for putting people in positions to be their best. And so when I think about this particular skill of making others better, and translates to life after sport as an athlete, we want to make sure that when we teach athletes, we're teaching them from the perspective of choosing a career that will help them add value to the lives of others. I truly believe in the principle of reaping and sowing. I truly believe in the principle of giving to others and it will be given unto you. And so I think the importance of that, not only as an athlete, but as somebody going into, building a sustainable career is extremely important. Because just from me having conversations with different athletes and being an educator, I've heard that many of them want to go into a particular career to make money. And although money is important, I think that the impact is more important. I think that the impact that you have on the lives of other people is most important. And so, as an athlete, we want to be somebody who is unselfish. Think about coaches, you want unselfish players. And so when it comes to business, when it comes to hiring individuals, you want individuals who are also unselfish. Individuals who are helping to make the organization better. And so making others better is our third principle in terms of translating athlete skills and helping them achieve success in life after sport. So our fourth principle is that you have to be a student of the game. So when I think of Jason Kidd, I think that one of the most important qualities that he has is that when he was an athlete, he was a student of the game. He studied that point guard position. He studied his opponents. He studied the tendencies of his teammates so that he could deliver the basketball in positions to make his teammates better. But then, when it was time for him to transition to life after sport and go into coaching as his chosen career path, he's still a student of the game, and that's why his players respect him so much. And So being a student of the game in sports means that you are studying your position. You know exactly what it is that you need to do on a daily basis to help your team win and for you to be successful at your sport. And when we look at this particular skill of being a student of the game and transferring that to life after sport, that means that you have to study your industry. Whatever your career path is, you need to be studying your industry. You have to know the ins and outs of the industry. And so I think that being a student of the game is not just a principle that applies to being an athlete, right? Studying your plays, making sure that you know your playbook, knowing the routes that you need to run. But also, when you transition to life after sport, let's say you wanted to go into education and you want to be a professor, well, you need to know your particular industry. What concentration are you going to be in? What is your research interests? You need to know these things, not only as an athlete, but also in life after sport. Our fifth principle is the importance of learning from a loss. I think it was in 2015 when Skylar Diggins tore her ACL during a game. And injuries happen as an athlete, right? And a loss can be perceived as an injury when it comes to being an athlete. A loss can be perceived as, you know, your team scoring 87 points and the opposing team scoring 89. A loss can be perceived as you being academically ineligible. A loss can be perceived as an athlete just being at the end of their athletic career, meaning that their eligibility has expired. And in order for us to get past these losses as athletes, we have to think about renewing our mind. We have to look at the loss as a lesson and not a detrimental aspect of our life that defines who we are. And so I think that learning from a loss is not just the principle when it comes to being an athlete, right? Because as an athlete, what do? You go back and you make adjustments. And I think it's the same way when it comes to life after sport. This skill of learning from a loss and renewing your mind and reframing your thinking is a skill that we all need throughout our entire life, because guess what? A loss in life can be perceived as you applying for a job that you know that you are qualified for and you believe in your heart that you are going to get, but for whatever reason it just doesn't work out the way that you thought it would. A loss in life could be that you are ready to go into your career, but the job market is not hiring in that specific position at that time. And so what do? You have to draw on your student-athlete experience and think about how you were able to bounce back from a loss as an athlete and do the same thing in life after sport. These principles are transferable. They're not just for our ability to be great athletes. These are principles that are extremely important when it comes to living a successful and sustainable life when our athletic career is over. And then our last principle is the ability to adapt to change. When I think of James Harden, some of you might be wondering why I have James Harden on this particular slide, because James Harden isn't necessarily a point guard. He could be a point guard. He could be a shooting guard. But when I think about his particular role and career throughout the NBA, he was somebody that had to adapt to change. He started off on the Oklahoma City Thunder, coming off of the bench as the sixth man on a really good basketball team. And so when he transitioned to now being the star of the Houston Rockets, he had to be able to adapt to change, adapt to change. Now, change is not always a good thing, right? Change can be a negative situation as well, or change can be an unfortunate situation that we just have to adapt to. And so James Harden is somebody that not only adapts to whatever position that he needs to play, or whatever role that his team needs at the moment, he is also an individual that was coming off of the bench to now being put into stardom, and he delivered because he was ready. And so this principle of adapting to change is extremely important in life after sport as well. And it's going to cause you to have to reinvent yourself. Let's think about this for a second. We're still living in a pandemic, right, where millions of people have lost their jobs. So now what do you have to do? Well, yes, the economy eventually is going to bounce back, but during this time, I think it's really important to try to reinvent yourself. You have to, again, study yourself, go back into who you are, the essence of who you are as a human being, and try to figure out what skills you possess that are going to make you better when you come outside of the pandemic. Once things are lifted and you're going back into your chosen career path, you have to be able to adapt to change, and that's what we're all doing right now. We're all trying to reinvent ourselves to make ourselves better, so that we can continue to add value to the lives of other people. And so I think it's so critical to be able to adapt to change as an athlete. What does your coach want of you this season compared to last season? Last season, you might have been the top scorer on the team, but this season, the coach might need you to be able to be a lockdown defender. Can you adapt to change as opposed to being rigid and stuck in your mindset, stuck in your ways? When it comes to life after sport, you have to be able to adapt to whatever situation that you are in while still having a vision for your future. And so I think adapting to change is going to cause us all to reinvent ourselves in one way or another. In closing, the principles that we've discussed in this presentation regarding transferring athlete skills to life after sports were, number one, you have to know your game, meaning really understand who you are, the essence of who you are, discovering the gifts and the talents and abilities that you possess. Number two, you have to have a vision for where it is that you are going. Number three, you have to be able to make others better by choosing a profession that you're also going to add value to the lives of other people. Number four, you have to be a student of the game, meaning you have to really understand your industry, study it, know it. Number five, learn from a loss by reframing your mind and understanding that a loss is nothing but a lesson. And then number six, being able to adapt to change, because the only thing constant in this world is change. I think that all of these principles directly apply to the student-athlete experience, but they also apply to life after sport. And so I think that as coaches, as leaders, as educators, as teachers, I think it's important that we start teaching our student-athletes the importance of identifying who they are and where they want their life to go, along with other transferable skills that you identify, so that they can be successful and live a sustainable life once their athletic career ends. Again, I am extremely grateful for the opportunity to serve at this virtual summit, and I hope that we will all stay connected. Thank you.